Legal aspects of business communication. Well, we've been talking about a lot of pluses about communication and how we must do it and how effective it must be. One must be careful in a business environment how communication is done, to whom, where, why, because it can have a lot of implications. So let us see some of this. In the complex business world, communication, obviously we've seen, plays a very, very important role. Sending a letter, memo, notices, communication within, outside, unless we are careful about what we write, how we write, it can come under legal scrutiny, because there are some rules of the game one needs to follow while doing business communication. Hence, most of the companies have come up with a communication policy which the employees need to follow, so that the company does not go through any hassles of legality. There are designated people who will be interacting with the media, which is appointing specific spokespersons, because whatever is said to the media becomes very, very public and it cannot be taken back. And once it is there in the media, it can attract any amount of legal. If there are any defamatory statements made, it can, lead to a lot of legal issues. The authority of the specific person who will be approving press releases and other important literature meant for the public. Again, every data and every statement that we are making to the outside world needs to be verified, validated before it goes public. Hence, there are designated people for that. The varied formal and informal fora where information and relevant details will be made available to employees, customer and the public. So the various forums where public information will be available, because these are validated and then only sent to these forums. The frequency of letters to employees, customers from the CEO and other top management functionaries. Again, the tone of the letter, the content of the letter, everything would matter. The type and range of in-house bulletins for employees. For everything there is a policy which needs to be adhered to. The feedback systems appropriate to the organization. People just cannot access anybody and write a feedback. There are channels, there are formats which need to be used. The manner in which the organization will respond to fraud, damaging press reports and other such adverse developments. There are policies for that. How a company will view each of this. Will this be considered? Will it cost somebody their employment? How will it be? Okay. Will there be a lot of support for the employee if it is a mistake or rather a legal issue outside? I mean, how does the company policy work towards each of this? Issuing rejoinders, meeting the press, interacting with people, contacting opinion givers or other actions to be taken for damage control. How will each of this happen and who will do it? They will be trained for each of these things. Public relations strategy. How will public relations happen? In fact, there are many companies who have public relation officers who are trained to handle the public. Some basic legal aspects in business communication. The following are the basis of legal aspects in business communication. One should be clear and careful about. Firstly, the date when we make the communication, address, company seal and mono, time of receiving the communication. When we receive a communication, we need to sign, which is normally done by the people who receive the communication. Time of sending the communication. Again, mostly if letters are going out, then that timing is also recorded. Technical language. What is the language we are using while making the communication? Signature. Who is authorized for that communication? Matters. Defamation. What is defamation? Simply, if defamation has to be stated, it's a communication made public which tends to be false and harmful to an individual's character, reputation and fame. It could be oral defamation or it could be written defamation. A company should establish a policy for handling information regarding both present and former employees. Resist making public any information unless it is required by legislative or judicial authority about any employees or anything for that matter. Anything which is, can cause defame. Keep a record or proper track of released information, because it would have been done with a lot of thought. Hence, if we can keep track of that information, then that would be necessary in adverse situations. Avoid making any subjective statements in the released materials. Everything should be objective. The key element in defamation is making certain information public. That statement leads to understanding two legal terms. One is publication and privilege. So let's look at these two words. Publication. To publish defamatory material about a person is to make public the information to a third party or make it available to who are not privileged. Then it risks serious legal consequences. So if there is an information about a person which is defamatory, suppose we are talking to a person, then it should be more 1:1 in camera, or it has to be done in a different way, which we will see right now. But if it is made public, then it calls for problems. So, suggestions to avoid defamation. One is to have a 1:1 meeting with nobody else around. Second, whatever is given in a sealed envelope. You mark the envelope personal and confidential. Wrap the enclosed message with opaque material so that nobody else can read other than the person who is meant to read it. Privilege. But there could be situation where defamatory material can be publicized, and that we will see. Circumstances where defamatory information available to others could be the absolute privilege. Court of law are places where defamatory statements may be made public, because while arguing, one has to bring up those things. In legislative proceedings also, defamatory materials may be made public. Conditional or qualified privilege. When a person wants a reference from a company, then the company is bound to give detailed information about the employee, and normally it is done through a sealed envelope and is meant only for the person who is reading. But this is another situation where information about an employee can be shared for reference purposes, academic or otherwise, job related. Invasion of privacy. Each employee has the expectation that one's personal life is free from invasion by others. This is true for anybody. When there is an unconsented, unprivileged or unreasonable intrusion into the private life of an individual, it is called invasion of privacy. That's what the word means. Misrepresentation and fraud. Misrepresentation is facts not put clearly, but was done out of innocence. And if there is a legal battle on that, unless the party is convinced that it was an innocent act, the person will have to bear the consequences. While fraud is actual misrepresentation of facts done with malice. There are reasons for it, for getting some advantage in some contract or the other, and the person wanted to take advantage of that fact. So in that case, he will have to go through a lot of legal consequences. The Indian Contract Act has elaborate provisions regarding fraud and misrepresentation. The Act has elaborate provisions regarding essentials of valid control and various types of contract like bailment, agency, pledge, etc. Legal aspects in the area forces the managers to draft messages carefully and cautiously. Hence, it's good to read the Act before making such misrepresentations or landing up in fraud. Other legal areas in business communication could be copyrights. If a book has a copyright, then if one photocopies, then we are violating copyright issues. Computer data security. Anybody who hacks and gets into confidential data, which is available in plenty in all companies, employee data, then revenue data, all these are confidential information stored in huge databases. Only privileged users can use or access these databases. But if somebody tries to get into this data and tries to get information, it comes under serious computer data security issues, and there are a lot of legal implications for that. Companies Act. The Companies Act narrates clearly what are the various documents the company has to maintain, which has a lot of legal bindings. They have to maintain these documents, like an employee attendance register, like the balance sheet of a company, and so on and so forth. There are so many such documents that the companies need to maintain to avoid any legal issues, because these are reviewed by the various authorities in the government and so on. Thank you.